Hello, America, the United Corporations of America. My name's Jordan Chariton, status quo in the hizzy. It is Tuesday, June 11th, very sunny in New York City, a little too hot. Thank you, climate change. Walker Bragman.
Hi, everybody.
Independent journalist. He might look like Harry Potter, but he is definitely a lot more intelligent. And he has been one of the leading, what do you call it? Tweeters. He has found where he has found where the bodies are buried when it comes to Joe Biden and a lot of other people actually finding old clips. I mean, him from the 90s, the 80s, and saying a whole lot of things that if you went far away from the TV and looked away, could kind of sound exactly like Newt Gingrich. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So Walker's going to join us for a little bit. I see that YouTube is suppressing us as usual. So, do you know about YouTube suppression?
Vaguely, a little bit. I know that I'm for turning social media platforms into basically public forums.
Yes. So basically, YouTube, it's the only platform where as your subscriber count goes up, meaning as you have more subscribers, the views seem to keep going down. Does that make sense to you?
Well, that sounds fun.
Yes. So we deal with that. But as always, for all 70 of you watching, we'll get that number up. I need you to smash that like button because you're going to want to smash it once you hear Joe Biden and his fancy campaign slogan. Do you know his campaign slogan?
This is quite the pitch you've got. You've got this down.
Oh, yeah, this is a routine. So we need you to smash the like button. The more people that press that like button, the more people that see this live stream. So if you're watching on your phone, you got to click out for a second of the live chat, see that thumbs up, smash that thumbs up, and then you could go back to the live chat. Don't stop at pressing the like button. I need you to press the share button too. So you could share it on your Twitter, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your whatever. More people that press the share button, the more people that see this. And we'll talk about membership in a little bit. Currently, we are at 400, count it, 458 status quo members. That's 458 great Americans and international viewers as well that are putting their money where their mouth is to create a media revolution. We got to get to 500 by the end of this month, so we are on pace for that. By the way, the 458 goes with our 335 patrons. So altogether, we're almost at 800 paid members, and that's how we're going to grow. That's how we fund in the field reporting. I'm going to show you more of our new reporter Marcus's reporting. He was just at the California Democratic Convention, so we'll have more of his reporting from there. Follow us on at Status Quo on the Twitter. I'm at Jordan Chariton. Subscribe to our podcast and join our email list by going to statusquo.com. You'll see a little box to enter your email. That is another way we grow. So I hope the audience doesn't mind because I've been a little heavy on Joe Biden lately, but I have no choice. Because honestly, and I'm sorry to people who think I'm a little crude, this is Hillary Clinton with a penis. This is Hillary Clinton with a penis. I said it. You didn't say it. More importantly, I think Joe Biden is worse than Hillary Clinton. I actually do.
100.
I think he's worse than Hillary Clinton, and that's saying something. Because Joe Biden is literally going to drive this train. He's driving this train straight for a Donald Trump re-election. That's Joe in the driver's seat. Choo-choo. And that's headed towards 4 more years of Donald Trump. I shit you not. Remember I said it. This is going to lead to Donald Trump's election if this man wins the nomination. Oh, I totally forgot. This is a super chat. So if you're feeling super, and if you want to support real independent journalism, because remember, I was lucky in 2016 to have the money from the Young Turks. They invested in us going around town, so that's how I was able to challenge, Donna Brazile and Trump voters and those things. So we need more money to be able to go out and challenge Biden voters respectfully, but we got to challenge them. Kamala Harris voters, Mayor Pete, America's mayor. We got to challenge these folks, but I need the money to do it. So super chat, keep it going, and of course become a member. So CNN is in a tizzy today.
Right.
CNN is in a tizzy because their narrative that they want, just like they wanted the narrative in 2016, Hillary versus Jeb. That's the narrative they wanted originally, Hillary versus Jeb. And then they were very happy that the DNC and the Democrats rigged it for against Bernie, because then they got Hillary versus Trump. It's all a narrative game, as you know. So all day, they have been pushing because Biden is talking in Iowa and Trump is in Iowa. So they're basically pushing this narrative of it's Biden versus Trump already. And it's a subtle way of trying to get into viewers' mind that Biden is basically it.
So I don't think that Biden is as inevitable as Clinton was. I don't think that they view Biden, that anybody really views Biden as that inevitable. I think if Biden were to falter tomorrow, they have a number of candidates that they could shift to, including Kamala Harris, including Beto. I'm just kidding. It's not going to be Beto. But including Harris, including Buttigieg.
I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was kidding. He's not actually a progressive tweeter. This is an independent journalist, Walker Bragman. He has written for The Intercept. He has written for Huffington Post, I believe.
Yes.
He writes for Paste Magazine. And he has done some great investigative work going through old clips of Biden as a senator in the 80s. That clip where Biden, which we're going to play it today, is basically like, I don't want those criminals, i.e. black people, near my mother, and calling them predators. You found that.
I did not. I didn't find that one.
Okay.
But
well, you found a lot of good ones.
I compiled it. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I compiled it.
Right. So he's not literally a tweeter. I was just saying he tweets out a lot of these. Welcome, Mr. Walker. Don't spread fake news. Vladimir Vova.
I will do my best.
Thanks for the $1.99. So this is a journalist. He does good work. I was just kidding with the tweeting. So anyway, you were saying you think Biden is not as inevitable.
I don't think he's as inevitable. I think that Biden fits into one of these preconceived narratives that makes sense for media outlets like CNN and the people that are on CNN, because he's been around forever. They know him. They're familiar with it. And he's kind of who you would expect. He's the former vice president of a very popular Democratic president, the president who preceded this current administration. So I think he makes sense to a lot of people, but we'll see. I mean, I think there's a lot of hesitation because he is so prone to self-sabotage.
No, what I was saying is the matchup and the narrative
but
that
yes,
CNN would like.
This does make sense. To
Yes.
CNN, this narrative, Biden versus Trump, makes sense. And he's the presumed frontrunner, so...
Oh, and by the way, specifically to NBC, it really makes sense since its parent company, Comcast, a lobbyist for Comcast, held a fundraiser for Joe Biden, which they don't even disclose. But I digress. So what we're going to do here, folks, we're going to play, I hope all of you are not on an empty stomach, we're going to play some of Biden's speech today, because I was watching it, and I honestly have never in my life, and I'm talking, I'm comparing this to Ben Carson and 999. No, Herman Cain. I'm comparing this to Herman Cain and the 999 pizza plan. I'm comparing this to Ben Carson. I'm comparing this to, the worst of the worst candidates from the Republican side. I've never seen a worse campaign message and a worse strategy than what Joe Biden is selling to America.
What is his campaign message?
Well, let's go to the videotape. All right, folks, here we go. We're gonna play here and there. We're gonna cut in, cut out, give our thoughts. Here is Joe Biden in Iowa today. You have to work with him because honestly, not to be an ageist, he's talking a little slow.
Yet, President Trump denies there's any such thing as climate change. And it'd be funny if it weren't so damaging and so serious. And what about health care? Trying to have...
So we got to cut it right there real quick. So Joe Biden is actually talking like he's a warrior for climate change. The only issue with that, number one, he wanted to do a middle ground on climate change until his advisors and the world basically told him, you can't do a middle ground, the planet is burning. So like the Hyde Amendment, he reversed on that. So he put forth a climate policy. I looked at it. I mean, it's better than a middle ground, but it's not anywhere near what we need. But he also has very, very clear connections to not only fossil fuel companies, but just taking money from fossil fuel companies isn't it. Taking money from Wall Street, all of these Wall Street banks are heavily invested in natural gas, fracked gas pipelines. They're heavily invested in fossil fuel projects. So Joe Biden could talk all he wants and compare Trump and say Trump is terrible on climate change, which he obviously is. But Joe Biden is not going to bring us to the promised land on climate change, and he has conflicts of interest up the wazoo financially when it comes to climate change.
And just to build on that a little bit, his climate plan, while it's certainly more aggressive than I think a lot of people were expecting, which sort of drove the media coverage of it when he announced it, his plan leaves a big lane open for fracked natural gas. In fact, if you there's one way of reading it which says that basically that's the plan going forward is to continue our transition onto a natural gas economy, and then from there over time let the markets direct us into clean energy. But that's not going to work with the time frame that we have. I mean, we have a decade to radically change in an unprecedented way, according to the UN scientists who are leading this. We have a decade to radically and in an unprecedented way transform our energy consumption to avert climate disaster, which would be an increase in global temperatures greater than 2 degrees Celsius above what they were during pre-industrial revolution. Right now we're at 1 degree Celsius above. So if we want to keep it within 1.5 degrees. I know people sort of glaze over at these numbers, but we want to keep it within 1.5 degrees. That was the number that we laid out in the Paris Climate Agreement. But like, if we're going to do that, we need radical transition. And Biden's plan is like, we've got to make sure that new natural gas infrastructure meets these methane, these new regulations for methane leakage. But new natural gas infrastructure shouldn't exist. We shouldn't be building new natural gas infrastructure, and we should be winding down the natural gas infrastructure that we have now. So I view it very much as a middle-of-the-road plan.
I don't think it's a middle-of-the-road plan. I think it's a regressive plan, because methane actually does more damage than carbon dioxide. This is a known fact. The natural gas industry could spin it as any way they want. Listen to Josh Fox on methane compared to carbon dioxide. Not that carbon dioxide is like good, but methane is worse. And we're fracking and I mean, it's only gotten worse under Trump. But what do you think? What do you think? If Biden becomes president, he's going to scale back the explosion in pipeline construction in this country? President Obama bragged during a speech that we had more natural gas exploration and drilling under my administration than any before. Biden's the same way. So natural gas, you might as well say, I am for burning the planet. That's what natural gas is. It's not natural.
Well, right. And what's going to happen is if we don't meet our climate deadline, it's going to be a death sentence for maybe not people in the United States, although some people surely on the coasts, but in areas that are vulnerable, in countries that are not as developed, that is a death sentence for them. And for species, thousands and thousands of species across the planet, puts them at risk. We are already in a sixth grade extinction period. But also this trend, among Democrats singing to sing the gospel of natural gas as a cleaner alternative. I mean, this is something that has been a continuation of an Obama-era policy. A couple months ago, the Democratic House, with no opposition, passed a bill to push, energy infrastructure construction projects in Europe to export American liquid natural gas to Europe. And it was framed as a way to combat Russia. And every single Democrat, minus a couple no votes, voted for it. And when I say no votes, I don't mean nays. I mean people who just did not vote for it, just abstained. And that includes Ilhan Omar. But among the yes votes was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, which didn't get a lot of attention.
It did not.
You did a story on that. Yes. There's another thing that we cannot afford other than climate change. Let me tell you something, folks. If you were damaged from the financial crash in 2008 and you want a president that's going to actually do something about it, we obviously know Obama didn't do much. I mean, Dodd-Frank was a Band-Aid for a gunshot wound. Well, let's hear Joe Biden on Wall Street. Here we go. Say it ain't so, Joe.
The Justice Department declared the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional, and he saw how You know, President Trump thinks that Wall Street and the super rich built this country. They didn't build the country. The middle class built this country. And unions built the middle class. That's how we got to where we are. And so, folks, we got to build an economy that rewards work, not just wealth. We got to return the dignity of work. You know, and I think that, look, I believe that the president is literally an existential threat to America for three reasons. One, he is a genuine threat to our core values. And if you wondered about that, remember what happened in Charlottesville. I never thought I'd see that happen in my lifetime again. You had people climbing out of the fields and from under rocks, carrying torches, contorted faces, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile that was chanted in Europe and in Germany in the 30s. Same exact language.
Sorry about that. So what's amazing about that, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Let's start with unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. Yes, the same unions that Joe Biden and his ilk have destroyed since the 1980s. Joe Biden, as I've reported, as Status Quo has reported, obviously was a big proponent of NAFTA. He is still a proponent of the TPP, which would further decimate, particularly that Rust Belt region that Trump won over. Would basically, we're already looking at an automization.
You got it.
An automized future with a jobless economy. Joe Biden, literally, I reported this on Sunday, he has fundraisers scheduled in Silicon Valley with millionaires that were on President Obama's TPP advisory committee. He's doing fundraisers actively with TPP boosters. And this guy, in front of the camera, CNN's not going to tell you this, is telling you, well, unions built America. Yeah, your policies destroy unions. And that's why Comcast likes you, because Comcast is one of the biggest union busters in America. And by the way, yes, the middle class, he says the middle class built the country, not Wall Street. Well, it's funny because you're talking very, very soft about Wall Street. This is him last night. Wall Street and significant bankers and people, they're all positive. They could be positive influences in the country, but they didn't build the country. The middle class built the country. I don't know, Walker, am I being too tough? When's the last time Wall Street has been a positive influence on America?
When I think of it, I'll let you know. But I mean, it's funny to hear.
Whoa.
It's funny to hear this from Biden, who has skipped meeting with Democratic constituents to go have fundraisers with lobbyists and Wall Street guys. And yeah, Biden has been a proponent of free trade agreements, whether it's NAFTA or trade relations with China or the TPP. Hillary got a lot of flack for calling the TPP the gold standard. Joe Biden said basically the same thing, the standard by which future trade agreements will be measured. I have the video. It exists. It's out there. So yeah, Joe Biden, union man, is a farce, I think.
And remember, folks, if you have not pressed the like button, it's that thumbs up button right under the video. So if you're watching on your phone, click out for a second, click out of the live chat, press the thumbs up. That makes more people that don't see this video, that don't see the live stream in their feed. The more likes, the more people see it. It's YouTube's algorithm. I'm not a big fan of YouTube, but smash the like button. Thank you very much. We got 180 people watching, but only 108 likes, so we need about 70 more of you. Smash that like button. I don't really care if you like me. Just fake it. You could dislike me. Just fake it.
He's likable.
I'm likable. What did Hillary say? Oh, no, Obama said, you're likable enough to Hillary.
Yeah, you're likable enough.
Right. And also, so another amazing thing about that, him pretending to be like, he's doing what Hillary did, which is tell like Wall Street, I'm going to tell you to cut it out. And like Wall Street's not going to get a pass for me. While at the same time, she's basically having private speeches talking about having a public and private position. Joe Biden is trying to have it two ways, where he looks populist, he sounds populist in speeches in Iowa, but He talks about Wall Street could have a positive influence. Let me tell you what Wall Street's positive influence will be if Joe Biden becomes president. You ready? You ready? Here we go.
No new growth, just more debt. And that puts middle-class programs that they rely on and they've worked for at real risk. Paul Ryan was correct. When he did the tax code, what's the first thing he decided we had to go after? Social Security and Medicare. Now, we need to do something about Social Security and Medicare. That's the only way you can find room to pay for it. I don't know a whole lot of people in the top 0.1% or the top 1% are relying on Social Security when they retire. I don't know a lot of them. Maybe you guys do. So we need a pro-growth progressive tax code that treats workers as job creators as well, not just investors, that gets rid of unprotected loopholes like stepped-up basis. And it raises enough revenue to make sure that the Social Security and Medicare can stay, still needs adjustments, but can stay. And
So, you know the amazing part about that, folks? The truly amazing part about that? When he's talking about Wall Street could have a strong influence in the economy, yeah, Wall Street's idea of a positive influence in the economy is to privatize Social Security, is to privatize Medicare, and, make it what Paul Ryan's dream was. That is Wall Street's vision of their positive contribution to society. And, Joe Biden agrees with it. He might not be saying, let's privatize it, but what he just described, progressive pro-growth, is
Means-tested cuts. So basically, right now, Social Security is not an entitlement program. You pay into it, and you get money back for your retirement. But what Biden is proposing is that we turn it into a welfare program, which makes it more vulnerable. So if you means test Social Security, which is, by the way, already means tested, right? So like, if you add an additional layer of means testing where people above a certain threshold don't get anything, but they pay into it, that makes the program very vulnerable because, well, not everybody gets it. Not everybody is, everybody's paying in, but not everybody gets it. It's no different than what we would consider a traditional welfare program at that point. And we all know how easily welfare is attacked in this country. And Joe Biden knows it because he was one of the guys who was in favor of it.
And by the way, when Obama was president, and Joe Biden was the one negotiating for Obama with Mitch McConnell, Obama never got his hands dirty and went at the Capitol Hill. It was Joe Biden, Republican light, with Mitch McConnell, Republican. And Obama was offering things like chain CPI, which would have made cuts to Social Security. And they were talking about in their grand bargain. Remember that? The 2012-2013 grand bargain? They were going to be cuts to Social Security. You know what wasn't going to be involved? They weren't going to be cutting the defense budget. No. Yeah. They weren't going to cut subsidies to ExxonMobil or Wall Street. It was going to be Social Security and this and that. And the most insane thing, Thomas Frank wrote a great book, What's the Matter with Kansas Anymore? And it's about people voting against their own interests. The very voters, I'm not saying all people over 50, because obviously Bernie has a lot of progressive voters that are over 50.
Bernie Sanders, famous millennial.
Right. But the very voters that support Joe Biden, generally the ones, older, above 50, definitely above 65, would be disproportionately harmed by the things that he has proposed, which, by the way, proposing cuts to Social Security and Medicare, just let me call it what it is. It's giving Wall Street the most essential financial product. They call it financial instruments and products. That is what Wall Street has wanted basically since the Gordon Gekko greed is good birth of the 1980s. They want to get rid of it, and they want to make it a privatized so they could gamble like they did with the housing mortgages, so they could gamble with your Social Security. And Joe Biden has said things in the past. It's a slippery slope. If you start cutting even a little bit, they're going to go for the whole thing.
Well, it's funny because this has been a consistent position of Biden's. He has never been a big fan of Social Security and Medicare. In fact, in the 90s, when the Republicans were pushing the balanced budget amendment, the sort of centerpiece of Newt Gingrich's contract with America, which would have mandated that federal spending not exceed what we take in taxes. Biden supported that, and while he was defending it on the floor of the Senate, he said, I proposed a federal spending freeze, and I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits, and I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time. This is a guy who has consistently favored cutting or restricting federal spending, particularly that of the safety net.
But also, I
wouldn't call him Republican light. I would call him
a Republican.
Republican.
He's basically Bob Dole. Maybe a little. No, yeah. Bob Dole.
He's kind of.
Yeah. It's also really obscene when you see him trying to straddle the line.
Yes, veterans benefits too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you see him trying to straddle the line where the middle class and unions built this country, not Wall Street, but also say, well, Wall Street could have a positive influence. Very much sounds like Hillary Clinton in that private Goldman Sachs speech saying, oh, your role in the financial crisis, it was politicized. It was misunderstood. Well, this is a man who voted in the 90s to deregulate derivatives. I don't want to get too in the weeds for you, but deregulating derivatives was the opening of the floodgates to the 2008 financial crash. So was repealing Glass-Steagall, which he was just hunky-dory with. Joe Biden voted for that. He also voted to deregulate the media industry, which is why we have the corporate sensationalist crap we have. But thank God, it's also why we have an opening here at Status Coup. Become a Status Coup member for as low as $5 a month. We are currently at 458 Status Coup members, and membership is how we grow. So, do you want me in the field to challenge Joe Biden's voters? I'm not going to knock them over the head, but I will figuratively challenge. No, I will literally challenge them
to a duel.
Do you want me to?
But that's an extra 5.
If I'm out there enough, trust me, one way or the other, I will get some questions into Mr. Biden, and I could promise you, I will be humble, but I will promise you those questions will go viral. I could promise you that. But the only way we could do it is if we grow our paid membership. $5 a month, $10 a month, or $20 a month.
And if enough people give $20 a month, Jordan's going to grow a mullet.
That's right. Or $179 annually. Think about it. Is real journalism in the field, aggressive journalism, worth it to you that you could forego your Starbucks Frappuccino this week? Or, I don't know, whatever frivolous things we all spend money on. I think in the field journalism is worth it, unless you want to leave it to CNN. I mean, we can leave it to CNN to cover Joe Biden's rallies. I think it's worth it. So statuscoup.com/join. There's another thing, though.
I have to say, it is sort of a dying industry. It's a hard industry to sort of break into and to succeed in, especially with the new model, and everything is like-driven. So I know this is a pretty hard sales pitch, but it is necessary. I mean, we don't have people going out and covering the town halls that you guys do, which is great. I admire the work that you guys do. I think it's important. I think it's real. And I think it's worth it. So.
Well, it's funny because you and I were talking a few weeks ago how you want to do what I consider to be like disappearing middle class type journalism, where you go out and you interview people that are homeless, or you interview people on the affordable housing crisis in Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Chicago, New York. And we were talking about that, and there's literally not a functioning, vibrant journalistic outfit in America that will pay a reporter to do that. Maybe occasionally the New York Times does a one-off story like that, but not on a consistent basis. And that's
you get some with, maybe the Atlantic does one every now and then, and maybe, but they crop up in different places. But it used to be that was the model. These long features. And you know who used to do a really good job of this? Newsweek. Newsweek used to do great investigative long form feature pieces.
Hey Sherry. I'm glad you brought that up. Sherry says for me to hire you. You know what, Sherry? I have talked to Walker in the past, but unfortunately, I cannot print money like the federal government, so I need the money to hire people. I can't just grow it out of my behind, Sherry. But Walker could definitely do things for Status Coup down the road, but I can't print the money. So you need to become a Status Coup member I know that there's of 200 watching, there's got to be some that are on the fence. We've had in the past week, we have had over 50 people, over 50 new people sign up as members because we have shown them. We have gone out in the field. We had Ty covering Bernie in California. We had our new reporter, Marcus, covering Bernie in Nevada and California. And we want to get out there more. My back is finally healing after surgery. I'm ready to get out there. But we could only grow as far as you take us. And by the way, there are a lot of outlets, I won't mention names, that ask you to pay $10 a month or whatever they ask you to pay. And what do they give you? Trump 24/7, Russia 24/7, Stormy Daniels, Nancy versus Trump, and bullshit. I want to give you, and we want to give you, we want to get out in the field and cover the fights against these pipelines because this is environmental genocide. We want to get out there and cover the water contamination. Did you just see in West Virginia they got purple water coming out of the faucets? I'm not talking purple rain. I'm talking purple water coming out of people's faucets in West Virginia as we speak. I can't get into details, but I'm working and Jen's working with me on a major story. If you thought our story that proved that they were cooking the water testing in Flint, that they were cheating on the water testing, if you thought that was good, what we are on the verge of breaking will make that look like child's play. I'm not going to say anything more just out of safety, but let me tell you something, folks. We are ready to go. We just need you to join the Coup de Cavalry. That's right, the Coup de Cavalry.
Wow.
So if you got $5 a month, $10 a month. So getting back to Biden, this is a man who is publicly in his speeches talking about, Wall Street could be a positive influence. Well, let's see what Joe Biden has to say about those billionaires. Those billionaires. He thinks those billionaires are just misunderstood.
This huge concentration of wealth. And the folks at the top aren't bad guys. I get in trouble in my party when I say wealthy Americans are just as patriotic as poor folks. I found no distinction. I really haven't. But this gap is yawning. It's gaping. And it's having the effect of pulling us apart. You see the politics of it. And the country's not going to stand for it forever. So we have to deal with the tax code. It's wildly skewed toward taking care of those.
So in 40 years in public life, Joe Biden, he hasn't seen any evidence that the wealthy people might be corrupt and that wealthy people maybe have bought off people like himself. He hasn't seen any difference. And by the way, I know wealthy people that are super patriotic. I know a few wealthy... I always talk about Ben and Jerry, who make great ice cream, and I'm very depressed because I'm lactose intolerant now, and I can't eat Ben and Jerry's without dying. Anyway, but it's not their fault. I'm lactose intolerant.
They have lactose free. I'm the same way. Oh yes.
Ben and Jerry's has lactose free ice cream.
Oh yes, and it is.
Where do you get that?
Oh, it's glorious. Where you can find it.
Oh, well, that's helpful. So Joe Biden. Oh, the billionaires. It's not their fault. Well, let me ask you a question. Let me just ask you a question, because I'm a very visual person. You see this chart? This is from 1980. That red line is all the wealth going upward, and that blue line is all the wealth going downward. The bottom 50%'s wealth going down. Well, what started in 1980? Well, excuse me, what started in the 1970s? A lot of people don't know this. They started peeling back the laws on money in politics. In the 1950s and 60s, you actually had pretty rigid regulation on how much individuals could donate, on how much corporations can donate. You did not have politicians that were basically bought off. I mean, you had politicians that got money from certain individuals, but you didn't have, there was stricter regulation on the first PAC. It wasn't a super PAC. The first PAC, Political Action Committee, if you watch Get Me Roger Stone, that was Roger Stone in the 1970s. So in the 1970s, PAC started, and then you have the deregulation of Wall Street, and then you have corporate money flooding, and then you have the explosion of lobbying in K Street. This all started in the 1980s. So this, when Joe Biden says, "Oh, it's not," these millionaires are just as patriotic as the wealthy people. Well, it's the millionaires who are buying off the politicians. So I'm not blanketing all millionaires as toxic shitbags, excuse my French, but I am saying it's really, really the wrong message in 2019 and 2020 when you have had an explosion in an anti-establishment fervor that has not gone away since 2016 to say, oh, it's not the billionaires' fault.
Right,
It's just the tax system that's the problem. This is what Democrats always talk about: fixing the tax code. Fixing the tax code is not going to fix the structural disease. The structural disease is we have fetishized business in this country, where business. That's why I call it the United Corporations of America. Business runs our government. They run the politicians. They own the politicians, like Joe Biden. I don't know if it was you or somebody else found a clip of him basically saying, yeah, if somebody gives me $250,000, they didn't buy me, but sure, if they want to come in my office.
Another one somebody else found. But just to clarify, so what happened in the 70s was you had Watergate. And after Watergate, there was a push to actually regulate the amount of money in politics. So it wasn't necessarily that Congress was repealing any regulation on speech. What happened was that you had a Supreme Court decision come down that said you can't regulate how much money people spend on political messages. You can regulate how much they donate to campaigns. You can regulate how much they give to a particular candidate or party, but you can't regulate how much they spend just on their message. And that really that decision was Buckley versus Vallejo. It came down in 1976.
Muhammad said, "Kid's done his research."
Oh well, yeah. And so after that really did open the floodgates. And you start to see corporate speech doctrine emerging. You have the Bilotti case come down, which sort of precursor to Citizens United, which basically said that corporations are, for the sake of spending money on politics, they're the same thing as people. You can't regulate how much a corporation can spend on whatever. Anyway, that's getting into the weeds. The point is that, yes, politicians like Joe Biden are very transactional, and they view things very transactionally. So you have, at the same table, you'll have workers and you'll have management, and then everybody gets a say. But the workers represent a much larger constituency than management. But the management can spend more money than the workers can. They're the ones who are bankrolling your campaigns. And actually, in the 70s, when Biden was testifying for this campaign finance regulation that they passed, I think it was the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, really original. He said, when I was running, I went to all the rich guys and they said, come back to me when you're 40, son. So I had to go out and I had to raise money from the people. And clearly that model for Biden has changed now. But he sees this as sort of a surmountable challenge. This is something that talented politicians can overcome. And, that's just the way things are. And he doesn't really have a vision for change. And what's frustrating about that, as you said, there is this grassroots fervor right now, this momentum. For the first time, arguably since the progressive era, that is pushing for policies like Medicare for all or a Green New Deal or a $15 minimum wage or more. And the idea that you wouldn't harness that and push for these goals, now when you have the opportunity to do it, there's really no excuse. The only explanation that makes sense is that you oppose those policies. And I think Joe Biden really does oppose those policies.
Well, I think he opposes those policies, but I also think it's a fault in Joe Biden's thinking, but also Nancy Pelosi's thinking and Chuck Schumer's thinking, because they still think along the lines of whoever's got the most cash will generally win an election. And I think Hillary Clinton proved that is not true.
Well, they also remember the 1980s, right? Like when Reagan won, he didn't just win; he crushed. He won, I think, every state but one in 1980, and it was a landslide. And Democrats, I think, are still of a certain generation are still haunted by that. Like if we push too far left, Ryan Grimm said this best. He's like, if they push too far left, the ghost of Reagan is going to come and haunt their house. Like that. Right. That thinking still exists. But the problem is there really isn't a lot of evidence that is still what is happening. I mean, right. Hillary Clinton ran a campaign very much predicated on that idea that we can have some things, but we gotta be careful with what we say, with what we push for. We gotta compromise from the middle. And she lost.
A non-existent middle, by the way.
A non-existent
because
middle.
there is no moderate Democrat anymore. A moderate Democrat is a Republican.
That's right, because the GOP has continued to pull to the right, and the Democrats have consistently tried to keep to the center. But as the GOP moves to the right, the center changes, and I don't understand why people don't get this. Like people in DC, I don't know why they don't get it. And to an extent, I think many do. I think their careers are kind of dependent on this model, and they'd rather have a Republican in power than a progressive because that's their livelihood.
Right. And by the way, for those of you who said, Jordan, stop fidgeting and pay attention, I am paying attention, but I also have to look for updates, and we do have an update. Where are you? Welcome, new Status Quo members, Will and Patrick. We are now at 460. Count it, 460 Status Quo members. So I wish I could update the graph live. I'm not that skilled. But we just got 2 new members. So welcome to the revolution, Patrick Menard and Will Oliver. I will not let you down. We will not let you down. Remember, we are trying to get to 500 members by the end of this month. Membership is how we grow, and you can become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month, or $179 annually, and that's how we're going to be able long-term to hire more reporters. So keep it coming. If you're sitting on the fence, I don't know what you're doing. Fences are thorny. You don't want to get hurt. Don't sit on that fence. I want to play a little bit more of Joe Biden's speech in Iowa because it gets worse.
Carrying Nazi flag, accompanied by white supremacists. So, folks, look, President Trump thinks that Wall Street and the super rich built this country. They didn't build the country. The middle class built this country. And unions built the middle class. That's how we got to where we are. And so, folks, we got to build an economy that rewards work, not just wealth. We got to return the dignity of work. And I think that, look, I believe that the president is literally an existential threat to America for 3 reasons. One, he is a genuine threat to our core values. And if you wondered about that, remember what happened in Charlottesville. I never thought I'd see that happen in my lifetime again. You had people climbing out of the fields and from under rocks, carrying torches, contorted faces, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile that was chanted in Europe and in Germany in the 30s. Same exact language. Carrying Nazi flag, accompanied by white supremacists, accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan, and confronted by decent people who said, "Not in my city." And what happened? When he was asked to comment on it, he said, quote, "There were very fine people in both groups."
So what you have here, and I want to first, as a disclaimer, make very, very clear that obviously I agree with Joe Biden on this. Any objective person would agree that what Trump did is absolutely disgusting, and you can't equate Nazis and neo-Nazis with like protesters of that. So let's put that out of the equation. Obviously, it's not it doesn't take political courage to condemn what Trump is saying. But if you think if you actually contain nuance in your brain, thank you for the super chat, $5 from Trichometrist. Earn that money. Thank you. Joe Biden is talking about the scourge of racism and bigotry when Joe Biden has actually pushed forward some of the most racist and bigoted policy in American history. Walker reminded me to get this clip. This is Joe Biden on the Senate floor. It might not be him carrying tiki torches and saying Jews won't replace us, but it's certainly bigoted. Do you remember this?
To the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no background that enabled them to have to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect.
I give you the floor.
Yeah, so that was his crime bill pitch. That was his pitch for the crime bill, for tough on crime. And I mean, there's really, what can you say to that?
To me, that's worse than what Hillary Clinton said. I mean, it's both.
It is.
There's 2 peas in a pod, but it's considerably worse.
I think so. I mean, at that point, it's just kind of picking which foot you want to shoot. But I mean, to me, it's. I honestly don't know what to say about it. It's just it's vile. It was wrong at the time. It's really wrong now. He's not the only Democrat to have supported it. We tend to forget that this was a bipartisan crime bill. It was pushed by people in both parties. It was also pushed by there was a lot of racist stuff going on, but it was also pushed by certain black leaders, and we forget that.
David, don't go out and mug anyone. People are saying this is depressing me. It's ruining my day. Don't do it. But hey, I'm sorry to depress you, but I got to tell you the danger here, because I'm telling you folks, this is not a joke. It might look funny, but this is not a joke. The train is leaving the station, and if this man becomes a Democratic nominee, I'm telling you right now, folks, because I was in Michigan. I was in Wisconsin. I was in Pennsylvania. I was in Ohio. He's going to lose, and I think he might lose worse than Hillary Clinton did, because Hillary Clinton had a bad record. Joe Biden's record is longer, and Joe Biden's record is worse, and Trump is going to be able to sell people in the Midwest that he has been fighting for them. Even though he hasn't, he's going to be able to spin the new NAFTA agreement as like better. It's not. He's gonna be able to spin that the plants are coming back. Just give it a little more time. If you give me another 4 years, we'll get these plants going. And Joe Biden is not a contrast to that, because Joe Biden is in large part responsible and partly responsible for the misery in those states. Because frankly, folks, I'm keeping it real. I'm not trying to offend anyone that doesn't live in those states. The election it's the United States of Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Those states will decide this election. I think on the margins, Arizona might be in play. I think on the margin, I don't think Florida's in play anymore. I think North Carolina possibly could be in play. But it's those states that Trump won that are going to decide the election. And I don't see how somebody with this history is going to inspire the 5% less black people. That 5% less black people came out in 2016 for Hillary Clinton than they did in 2012 for Obama. 5% less Latinos came out for Hillary Clinton than they did Obama. And this was against a man calling Mexicans drug lords and rapists and wanting to put a wall around Mexico and the United States. And of course, 18 to 29-year-olds, 6% less came out for Hillary Clinton compared to Obama. I don't see how Biden turns any of that around. He could post as many friendship bracelets as he wants of him and Barack Obama, but I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it. Am I missing anything?
Look, if what worries me is that Joe Biden has already gone out and said, Trump's economic numbers are great, but we got to, but we got to be careful to remember where those numbers came from. And I think the line was he inherited those numbers from Obama Biden, just like he inherited everything else in his life. And this plays great to Democrats, but it's not going to play great to anybody around the country if they are struggling, because there are a lot of people who do feel left behind. A lot of people just feel like it doesn't really matter if I vote, I'm screwed either way. And so you had a lot of people who just didn't vote last election. You had a lot of people who voted, who were negative voters, who voted against rather than for. And I think even if Biden wins, it's just going to be, it will be 4 years with, very little accomplishment, with possible Republican pickups in the midterms and whatnot. I will say that it is better that if Democrats win 2020, no matter who the candidate is. I know that there are people out there who feel very strongly that it has to be, it's Bernie or bust, or it's whoever or bust. And I think that's not as viable a position this time around when you have a census coming up, you have another Supreme Court seat coming up, possibly more. The stakes are very real, and what worries me is that Biden just won't inspire, as you said.
Well, the other thing that I think is problematic, and we're not going to play this host speech, Biden is running a campaign not on big ideas. He's running a campaign on values. Trump is against our values. Trump is, literally, he said in this speech, that's why I put it in the headline, let's just make America America again. Well, part of the big reason Trump won election is because he is different, and he does have different values, and he does, in a fake populist way, but he does very much upset the apple cart with his tweets and his bombast and his crazy behavior. So people aren't yearning for the good old days where corruption existed, because basically what Biden represents is make corruption normal again, meaning when it's in the back room and it's not so transparent.
When we could all just get behind these politicians, when we all got behind our leaders while they were cutting deals, and Democrats and Republicans put on a good show for the public, but then when they're in closed doors, they get together and they come to an agreement about which Middle Eastern country they want to bomb, and which special interests they want to protect, and which countries they want to trade with and whatnot. Those are the days that Biden is hearkening back to, and I think that he knows his voters. A lot of them do miss this mythical time, but they don't realize that younger folks didn't come up with, they didn't have the job market that we had back then. They don't have that today. But we have high healthcare costs. We have a gig economy. We have paycheck to paycheck, and people not retiring and positions not opening up.
But the problem is, and why I call Joe Biden, I'm not even being funny. I'm literally calling him Hillary Clinton with a penis. When you don't run a campaign on specific ideas, yeah, Hillary Clinton had some policy proposals, but I'm talking core ideas. With Bernie Sanders, you know what it is. Medicare for all, free public college, aggressive action, Green New Deal. You don't have to guess what it is. When you don't have a campaign based on core, inspiring, game-changing proposals, if your whole campaign is on ideas like stronger together, right? We're stronger together, or we're against Trump and dividing America. You're not gonna win, because that's not what's on people's mind. The main thing, the first thing on people's mind, and I'm saying this as a white man. Obviously, black people have major concerns with Trump, and they should. Same thing with brown people, same thing with indigenous people. So I recognize my privilege. But the core voting bloc that is going to decide this election, their main issue is working paycheck to paycheck. Their main issue is the fact that they, even if they have Obamacare, can't even afford it because of the deductibles, the co-insurance, the high co-pays, you name it. The core problem to people is not the division. And basically, every candidate since I've been paying attention to politics that don't really have much meat under the bone, their whole campaign is on these vague principles of Obama we're gonna have a post-partisan America, and we're gonna heal the ocean and part the seas and all this. Well, what was Barack Obama's key policy proposal? He didn't have one. His key proposal wasn't a proposal. It was the fact that he was against the Iraq War. And that was a political winner at the time. He didn't have anything he inspired based on a lot of hot air. Joe Biden doesn't have that charm.
He does not have Obama's charisma. That's true.
Joe Biden can barely talk without looking like he's going to fall asleep. I'm not trying to be an ageist, but he does look kind of like he's lost a step. This is the truth. And if your whole campaign is going to be run on Trump is against our values, make America America again, Trump is embarrassing us against around the world. Well, the voters that are going to decide this election are the same ones that decided 2016. They're not voting for you if you don't have a sharp contrast.
Look, I think Biden's campaign is predicated sort of on I would say chauvinism in a way, like this kind of vibrato. He's kind of like Grandpa Han Solo in a way, like the first Han Solo, when he's all sexist and awful, like, where he kind of has this swagger about him, like, I don't really get all of these young people and their complaints. I don't have any empathy for it. We're better than this. Trust me. Trump's a punk. He thinks he's a tough guy. He doesn't know what it is to be tough. Well, frankly, that should not be how our elections are. It shouldn't be between two guys who want to have a cock measuring contest. It should be between different.
That just gave me a really.
I didn't have any other way. Yeah. Sorry. Although Hillary Clinton with a penis is also
that's true.
Pretty unpleasant.
That's true. But.
But yeah, that's what it would come down to. A race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is a pissing match.
Right.
You talk about we are better than this. We are better than that. We can have a political discourse that is focused on ideas. And frankly, I don't think you beat Donald Trump by going Donald Trump light. I could be wrong. Biden could win, but I know for a fact that I'm not wrong when I say that if Biden wins, he does not have the vision to lead this country in a meaningful way forward in 2020 at a time when we are in such dire need of that vision and leadership.
Right. D-Doc, thanks for the super chat, $5. I'm black. I don't claim to speak for all black people, but I agree with you on all that, Jordan. Well, thank you, D-Doc. I think the key thing here is really what Joe Biden is saying is let's go back to how it was before January 20th, 2017. Let's go back to that day, and it will be the exact same way without the tweeting and the chaos and the reality show. Well, the problem with that is majority of people were not happy with the state of the country. Not only because Trump was about to become president, but the majority of people, if you look at the polls, part of it was America is on the wrong track, right track, on the wrong track. So even though the CNBC and the CNN and the New York Times narrative is that the economy was on an upswing and it's the Obama-Biden economy and this and that, yes, it was on an upswing as far as artificial numbers. The unemployment rate was going down because a lot of people were dropping out of the workforce. A lot of that unemployment.
Or taking up temporary work.
Part-time jobs, freelance, jobs without health care. So most people, if the message is make America normal again, because he said that too, well, really what you're saying is let's just make America neoliberal again, and I promise you I won't tweet weird things. And that's not a political winner. I want to end with a little bit more because it gets worse. It does get worse. So bear with me, folks.
Trying to go after Bette Midler, for God's sake, in the middle of the D-Day ceremonies, for real, not a joke. And instead of repairing the relationships with our allies, he's continued to damage them. Think about this. No president of the United States has ever, since the end of World War II, we built that Atlantic Alliance and NATO, ever threatened to leave NATO. Never gone after our allies, embracing dictators and thugs, from Putin to Kim Jong-un, calling them my friend, sending love them while he's poking his finger in the eye of our allies. What's going on here? This is really dangerous stuff. And it's not easy. He's a threat, in my view, a threat to our core values. And folks, the fact of the matter is that 4 years of Donald Trump will be viewed as an aberration in American history. 8 years will fundamentally change who we are as a nation and how we're viewed around the world. We're not only the most powerful nation in the world, we've led the world not by the example of our power alone, but by the power of our example. That's why the rest of the world has followed us, because of our values, who we are, who we say we are, decency, honor. And it is being absolutely thrashed around the world. And look, the idea that I believe, and I didn't believe this, if you had asked me this 5 years ago, I'd have told you you're crazy. I think there's a genuine threat to American democracy. You know, I recommend a book to you by 2 professors at Harvard, How Democracies Die. None of them died in the last 100 years by someone battering down the door of the president or the Congress. They won a general election and they brought down all the barriers that prevented the abuse of power. They brought down all those things that allowed us to be a nation that we were together, allowing us to work in a way that we had arrived at a consensus. It's always been about the abuse of power. And look what he's doing. He not only attacks courts because he said, how can a judge with Mexican ancestry treat me fairly? The news media, all of them back there, they're all fake news, he says. No, everybody thinks that's kind of, it doesn't mean much. But look at the people copying his ways all around the world, whether it's Orban in Hungary, whether it's in the Philippines, over the country. And by the way, as you've noticed, folks, the fact of the matter is, we're at a moment where I think we have to reinstate our constitutional norms in the country. The presidency is not without limits. It's not without limits. It's a co-equal branch of the government with the Senate, the House, the Congress. I think it's time to, he says, let's make America great again. Let's make America America again.
So that's what I was waiting for. You want to make America America again. So there's so many things just astronomically wrong with what he said. First of all, it's a terrible, terrible political strategy. He is going to lose if that is his campaign. First of all, when he talks about our values around the world and how we are an example that people followed, I don't know if I'm hearing George W. Bush or Joe Biden, because that is not the actual truth of American history. America has not been revered around the world. America has been feared around the world, and we have done more. And some people call me, a Putin puppet and these things, but I just keep it real. We have done more to trample other countries' democratically elected leaders over the last 50 years than the very tyrants we were fleeing Great Britain from did, or its equal. So Joe Biden has this mystical image of America being a leader around the world when it's not met with the facts. He also talks about values, and you made a good point. I'll let you make it.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear Biden talk about checks on presidential power when the Obama administration oversaw the greatest expansion of executive power maybe ever. I mean, Obama killed an American citizen without due process of law overseas, just droned him. And the argument was that, this guy had forfeited his right to protection under the Constitution, and so it was fine. But it wasn't fine. I mean, if you want to talk about things that happened, like Donald Trump has escalated Obama's drone war. And Obama expanded on, Bush's war.
Obama also had a kill list.
Right. And these are things that slowly, over time, chip away at the foundations of American democracy.
It also breeds more terrorism, which isn't discussed. Thank you, Cax Smith, $5 in the super chat. You fight fake news with real journalism. That's what we try to do. Keep going.
And if he wants to talk about, coddling dictators, then what about Obama's relationship with the Saudis or the UAE? I mean, what about Obama's relationship with Israel? I mean, these are countries that are currently oppressing people that we just...
Wait. I hope Larry Sheridan isn't watching. He's a big Zionist, my father. He doesn't like anything negative about Israel. Go on.
Well, Israel is an apartheid state. But, we have cultivated relationships with... Our problem isn't with authoritarianism. Our problem is with authoritarianism that doesn't play ball with us.
Our problem is with authoritarianism that doesn't bend to our business interests.
Well, right. If there's an opening, like we love Bolsonaro, and we're going to continue to love Bolsonaro, whether it's a Biden administration or a Trump administration. We will continue to like him.
Which, by the way, The Intercept just broke the story that essentially they got all these emails and leaked documents that was a straight-up coup in Brazil. They put the old president, Lula, in prison. I don't know. I don't want to talk out of turn because I don't know this story as well as other people. But it was trumped up bullshit that they put the more populist progressive president in prison, and that paved the way for Bolsonaro. We're not saying a word about that. Neither is the Democratic Party.
Nope. That's because if it's good for there's been a view that if it's good for American corporations, it's good for America, and that view has to change.
Because we also don't, sorry to cut you off, but something you've been reporting on more than most. He's not saying anything about what we're doing in Yemen right now.
No, he's not. And Obama was the Obama administration oversaw that, the alliance with the Saudi-led coalition. We started aiding them under Obama. And now it's devolved into the world's worst humanitarian crisis, ground zero for history's worst cholera outbreak. I think 85,000 children have died, and that's a low estimate. And then you have 65,000 plus people died in the combat, and then there's the starvation from the blockade. We're bankrolling it. We recently, now with the Trump administration, we've okayed armed weapons manufacture in Saudi Arabia. The bombs that will be used, the American bombs that are used to dismember and destroy Yemeni lives, will be built now in Saudi Arabia, and Raytheon loves it. But that's who we've been. So Biden can say, and it does appeal to this sense of nostalgia, especially for older voters. This isn't us, and we're better than this. But really, we're not better than that, and we should be. We should be better than that. But I don't have the confidence that Joe Biden will make us better than that. In fact, I think that he has a record that indicates that he is not better than that. That he will be. I will say, Biden has criticized Saudi Arabia. He was one of the more vocal people in the Obama administration criticizing Saudi Arabia. So credit where due. But I still don't have the confidence that he's going to stand up to interests like Raytheon or Boeing or any of these companies that are profiteering off of these wars and fundamentally change how American foreign policy is conducted.
No, he's not, because most people don't realize this, and Mike Gravel pointed this out in our interview. The former Alaska senator who's running for president, he's obviously not running. He's already said he's not running to win. He's 89 years old, but to move the Overton window further left. Thank you, Maddie Perry, $4.99 in the super chat. Biden didn't run in 2016 because he knew Hillary bought the nomination. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with why he didn't run. He says it was over his son dying. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why he didn't run, but obviously losing your son at a young age is very difficult. So to run at that time, I don't like Joe Biden, but I do, feel bad that his son died. With that said, the reason that I think we are covering Joe Biden critically is not for clicks. If I wanted clicks, I would do Trump 24/7 like everybody else. The reason I'm doing it is I desperately don't want Donald Trump to be president for another 4 years. Just because we don't cover Trump 24/7 doesn't mean we don't see the danger of Trump. But the real danger to me is, okay, if you have Trump for another 4 years, that's awful. And Trump, without having to win a re-election, is like an animal unleashed. But Biden kind of just brings us back to basically the good old days of the Democratic Leadership Council and neoliberalism masked as, we're fighting for the little guy. And that's something we can't afford either. We can't afford Trump, but we also can't afford this either. And I think that...
Not that they're on the same level, just to clarify.
No,
so it is different, but it's...
If you put a gun to my head, I cannot, with good conscience, do anything to give Trump another 4 years. In 2016, when I was at the Young Turks, I said, if I have the choice, I'd rather 4 years of Donald Trump than 8 years of Hillary Clinton. And I meant it. I would have rathered 4 years of Donald Trump than 8 years of Hillary Clinton because
I don't think you would have gotten it.
Because I thought Trump would actually create a populist, progressive, activist rebirth, and he has.
To a large extent,
he
I
has.
think that is true.
But I don't want to get into what if down the road. Let's just say, I wouldn't tell my viewers what to do. I personally, if it's not Bernie or Tulsi or Warren, I will have to make some tough decisions personally, because I can't stomach another 4 years of Trump. There's too much at stake. You are right about the Supreme Court and other things. With that said, Joe Biden, and I keep saying it because I think the data is very clear. CNN doesn't talk about it. The New York Times doesn't talk about it. I read every exit poll in those Midwest states. The top issue in 2016 in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania was trade and immigration. Trade, i.e. NAFTA, TPP, and all these other toxic deals. That is not going to change in 2020. The things that those people in the Rust Belt cared about is not magically, they're not going to care about it anymore. When you have a pro-NAFTA, a pro-TPP, a servant of Wall Street, that's not going to beat Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is one of the best bullshit artists in American or world history, and he's still going to be able to spin himself as a populist. The only way you could knock him down as the fake populist he is to have a real populist. And that's Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying that because I personally support him. I'm saying it because he's the only one on a debate stage that could legitimately go after Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's not going to be able to attack him as a servant of Wall Street or a servant of anybody.
I think Warren could have built that case, but I do worry that the DNA test was such an absolute catastrophe. And I know that a lot of people don't like hearing that, but it was such a disaster because it indicated exactly how she would go about, beating Trump. But ultimately, that's just going to be she'd get hit over the head with that. I think sort of steamrolled.
Right.
I do think Sanders is, in my opinion, Sanders has the best chance of beating Trump and is the most committed to the. You get the balance of beating Trump and committed to the ideology.
Right.
And Warren, I think you get committed to the ideology, a little shakier against Donald Trump. Biden is not committed to any ideology, and right now he's doing very well. But I think that is going to
Biden in a span of 3 weeks flip-flopped on climate change. He was going to do a mealy-mouthed, middle of the road climate change thing. Then the whole country and the whole world and the media, frankly, went after him, saying this is grossly inadequate for the situation we're in. And then he put forward I don't think it's what we need, but a better climate change proposal. He flip-flopped. He was against the Hyde Amendment for 30 years. Within 48 hours, he flip-flopped on that. He's a political weather vane as the weather goes, and that sometimes is equally as dangerous as somebody like Donald Trump, because Donald Trump also has no ideology. I think you put a gun to my head, Trump is worse, but I don't want to put a gun to my head. And I want what's best for everybody living paycheck to paycheck. And I don't think that's Joe Biden. And I got to tell you something, folks. If this is the message, if this is Joe Biden's message for the 2020 campaign, and this is what he's going for, hold on.
That says the system has to be restored. Look, there's a lot going on, to state the obvious. United States of America, we have more great research university in Iowa to coast than all the rest of the world combined. And every single major innovative thing has come out only have the most powerful military, notwithstanding all the problems we have, I am genuinely optimistic. Let's make America great again. Let's make America America again.
That, if that's what he's going to go with, that's a political loser and a disaster. And you get the politicians you deserve, and you get the government you deserve. So if that's who CNN and the New York Times want to push forward, if that's who the DNC wants to push forward, I'm sure they're not stupid enough to put it in writing this time. But I mean, there's always mechanisms going on behind closed doors to prop up one candidate and knock down. I think that you're looking. I think Trump would have a pretty easy re-election. I also think, honestly, you look at these polls. If you read the polls very closely, overwhelming majorities in these polls are not familiar with Joe Biden's Senate record. Other high margins in the polls say they're open. They're not set in their candidate. I'm telling you, the more of his record that comes out, the more that it's not just, oh, he was Barack Obama's vice president, but the more his record comes out, the more clips that are unearthed by people like Walker. You can't beat Donald Trump with Bob Dole. You just can't. Any parting thoughts before we go?
I think that, look, I'm not going to say definitively that Biden will lose, because I don't want to make.
I will.
I don't want to get into the. That's your thing. That's But I will say that Biden represents exactly the same kind of politician that Trump ran against last time, and that's dangerous. That's a gamble, because I don't see any evidence that America will, that the country is more willing to go with that this time than last. I mean, granted, it was a few thousand voters that made the difference in these states, but I don't know. It's anybody's game. I hope that Democrats run a better candidate than they did last time. If they don't, it's a strap in, because it's going to be interesting.
Before I go, I want to fill you in on a few things. I interviewed Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, Fez Shakir. He is a 39-year-old. He's the first Muslim American to ever run a presidential campaign. So hop on over to statuscoup.com. You can see our interview. We spoke about the polls, which he actually acknowledged are kind of skewed towards older people. He also had some interesting things to say about the fact that most of these media companies are not disclosing their conflicts of interest when it comes to this campaign. For example, I don't know if you know this, but AT&T, CNN's parent company, they just gave Kamala Harris $51,000 in the first quarter. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That is good to know.
To be clear, it was both individuals working at AT&T and AT&T's corporate PAC combined. So it was both workers that work for AT&T and their corporate PAC that combined to give Kamala Harris $51,000.
Wait, whatever happened to that no PAC money pledge?
Right.
Well, and if I could just say something about that, because it bothers me. Like, after 2016, that became kind of a standard for candidates, right? You have, I'm not going to take PAC money, because Bernie said he's not going to take PAC money, and that's great. But there are so many other avenues for wealthy interests or moneyed interests to influence a campaign. We talked about earlier outside spending. That's money that's not going directly to the campaign, but it's going to outside advertisements that push the candidate or the candidate's issues. I mean, that's where the real money is. So it was always bullshit from the start, but now we know more that it's bullshit. And I mean, candidates have been running to Wall Street fundraisers trying to get, solicit help from those folks, even after taking that pledge. So don't buy into the no corporate PAC money pledge. It's nonsense, and it has always been nonsense. And if you need any more evidence of that, just look at my timeline.
At Walker Bragman on Twitter.
At Walker Bragman on Twitter.
And also, very important, for all 270 of you watching, we are now at 460. Count them, 460. That graph is outdated. 460 Status Coup members. Membership is how Status Coup can get out into the field and cover the 2020 campaign. Currently, there is no independent, keyword, independent journalists out there covering Bernie, covering Tulsi, going to Biden events, going to Kamala Harris events, going to America's Mayor Pete's events, and actually challenging some of these voters. I'm not talking about being mean and being nasty, but if you remember when I was at the Young Turks, as humbly as I could say, I think I did a somewhat decent job of challenging Trump's voters, of challenging Hillary Clinton's voters. And I think what's so important...
You're okay.
Thank you. What's so important about getting out there is not only to challenge the establishment and and not only to counter the corporate media propaganda by showing what's actually happening, but it's to give Bernie Sanders supporters a voice, to give Tulsi Sanders supporters a voice. Because if you don't get the true nature of the struggle that is currently going on out there, if you don't get the dire circumstances out there through Bernie voters' voices, through Tulsi supporters' voices, their healthcare struggles, their economic struggles, their social struggles, you go down the list. That's how you do it. Not by like sitting on panels on CNN and debating who's up and who's down. It's actually going out and talking to people. It's actually giving the microphone back to the people. I know that's our slogan, but it's literally what we're trying to do. So
Not just some random person that he found on the street.
Right. I found him down at Penn Station. Hasn't combed his hair in about 10 years, but it's fine. So I hope you'll consider becoming a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. That's how easy it is to support real independent journalism. And with that in mind, I will bid you, I apologize, the screen is going to go black for just 1 second. I am going to finish the stream today with more of that journalism that you, the members, you, Status Quo members, are creating. You are why Marcus, our new reporter, was able to go out there and cover Bernie Sanders in Nevada, and cover Bernie Sanders in California, and cover the California Democratic Convention. You are the reason. Here's Marcus and his interviews he did at the California Convention. Remember, folks, this is how we are going to grow. I'm not asking you for money so I could go get a nice dinner. I'm not even taking a full salary yet from Status Quo, which I might be at Penn Station soon. Statusquo.com/join. And if you can't become a member, if your financial situation is you don't have an extra $5 a month, you don't have an extra $10 a month, or you don't have an extra $179 annually, we don't want to make your situation worse. That's totally understandable. But what you can do, spread the word. Word of mouth is important. Tell people we're live every single day, 5 o'clock Eastern time. It doesn't even matter if they're progressive. It's not. There's actually, believe it or not, conservatives care about contaminated water.
Tell them about the tip line for stories. Obviously.
info@statusquo.com. That's info@statusquo.com. Send us your tips. We're also working on getting a more encrypted type of thing. So if you have a hot tip and you don't want to, you could send it through a more secure email. But for now, info@statusquo.com. Also, become a member because Jen Dyes is going to cover, Bernie's doing a big speech tomorrow on democratic socialism and why democratic socialism is the only type of politics that can actually defeat fascism. So Bernie Sanders is going to be in D.C. explaining what democratic socialism is and is not, and how that kind of politics and those kinds of policies are what you and I have been talking about, best set up to defeat fascism. So Jen will be covering that tomorrow. It's in D.C. We will try to turn around her videos as soon as we can. And Ty is moving to New York, so we could do more in-the-field coverage, him and I together. Got a lot of things going on at Status Quo, so we hope you'll jump aboard. Again, statusquo.com/join. And it's not just doing for us. You get bonus content, behind-the-scenes content. When I cut Walker's hair, we'll put that up just for members. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you for watching. Here again is Marcus Ely from the Democratic Party Convention in California. I will end with his interviews with Bernie Sanders supporters.
And I'll be back.
And he'll be back.
Marcus Ely here with Status Quo, and I am here with Evelyn at the California Democratic Party Convention. We just heard Bernie Sanders speak. Can you talk about what he was talking about and like what you specifically liked about him speaking?
I mean, Bernie was talking about the same talking points that he's been talking about all his life, which is about a political revolution, taking on the fossil fuel industry, the healthcare, the pharmaceutical industry, and bringing real change that we need in our country. So always excited to hear him talk.
There's a lot of things. I think, one is the fact that he's been fighting for the same issues for so long, and some people seem to think that that's a bad thing, but actually the issues that he's been fighting for years and years are the ones that will actually take us forward. Things like Medicare for all, getting rid of fossil fuels, taking on the pharmaceutical industry, the military-industrial complex. A lot of these things that some of the Democratic candidates are starting to talk about now, Bernie's been talking about for a very, very long time.
I think he's our best chance at winning. I know that people want to play politics about this impeachment process, which is ridiculous, but if we're going to, then we need to make sure that we have a candidate who will turn people out to vote. We have to motivate our base in order to beat Donald Trump and his evil minions, and Bernie can do that. He is just such an exciting, dynamic speaker, and he knows, he doesn't have to make stuff up because he's saying the same thing he's been saying for a long time. So that's the most important thing to me, is that we don't try to stay in the center thinking that we're playing it safe when, Bernie could have beat Trump in 2016. He had the energy to do it.
What issues are you specifically excited that Bernie speaks to? Like, which ones in particular speak to you?
I mean, the biggest being climate change. We have to deal with it, and we need some real action now. And he's been one of the only presidential candidates that's really pushing hard against the fossil fuel industry and wants to support the Green New Deal and really push it forward. And that's a big change that we need. Like, we are fighting for our survival here. And obviously systemic racism, taking on the prison industry, to me is really important, specifically when it comes to immigration. The prison industrial complex is a huge problem for people of color, and he's ready to take that on for us.
I mean, I think two of them are Medicare for all. I think that's, a very simple, easy to understand policy. People need the health insurance that they deserve. It shouldn't be, a question of whether or not they should get it. It should be a right for everyone. And also the Green New Deal. I think, of course, that's a resolution that was put out by AOC, but I think, Bernie, being an avid supporter of it, understands the scale of the problem, which I don't think all the candidates do. So I think that's a really important issue because it is really the stake of our future, of our entire world.
The one of the big things that I really love about Bernie is he wants to get money out of politics. He wants to reverse Citizens United and stop making it so that the top 1% are making all of the decisions for the rest of us. People shouldn't have to work 2 and 3 part-time jobs. We should be able to get health care. Just basic privileges, or not even privileges, basic comfort and rights. And Bernie wants to see that happen for everybody, and he's been that way forever. It's not a front. I mean, a lot of the candidates who have platforms, they're his platform. So, and then the ones who don't talk about the stuff that isn't his. Like, Pete Buttigieg won't mention the fact that he doesn't believe in healthcare, the Medicare for all. The ones who don't support that, just don't talk about it.
In 2016, there were all types of issues and whatnot with the DNC, and of course state party conventions as well. What are you are you noticing, rather, anything in specific that's going on in California?
I mean, unfortunately, we saw Kimberly Ellis lose this election, and we saw the power of the establishment. They really put in their power and forced a lot of people to vote in a way that they did not want to vote. And that was very unfortunate. So we hopefully will not see that with Bernie. That's the reason I got involved, because I want to be the change that I want to see. And so we're hoping that Tom Perez really brings some big changes with doing, and as fair as possible. We want to see fairness. We think Bernie has a real shot if it's really a fair process.
Definitely. Now we have 269,335,932 candidates running this time.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about all these candidates running against Bernie, and a lot of them, we don't know their names, and at the same time we're being told that we're not going to impeach Donald Trump because we need the Senate, but everybody's running for president and nobody's running for Senate. So how do you...
I mean, the hope is that as time goes on, that some of these will drop out and run for Senate. We really need to win all three this time. We have no choice. We've got to fight hard. So I'm hoping that the other candidates will get behind Bernie as the race progresses and it dwindles down to just a handful of candidates.
We will unify around a single candidate after the primary. I know that all the people who support Bernie are well, I can't speak for everybody, but I know people will support whoever the Democratic candidate is. The thing that I'm worried about is, will they show up and vote? That's one thing that showed up in 2016 is people are tired of thinking that, you'll have my blue vote no matter who, vote blue no matter who. Well, it's not true. And 2016 proved us that. If the party continues to take corporate greed over their human population, then people aren't going to get up off the couch and go. And Bernie he's the man who can motivate people. Like I tell people, Trump is a disease and Bernie is the cure. He's shown not just the power, but he's got the track record that he can bring college millennials out. He can turn out people of color. He knows what happens in rural neighborhoods when there's no sanitation and no water. Like he goes out and he actually talks to his people and finds out what they want, and what they need and what's going without being taken care of in this country. So I think Bernie is absolutely the man for the job.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.